This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, 'tis the season, friends, where, your favorite talk shows, including this one, thanks for being here, are presenting Years in Review. And you know the drill. We partner with our friends at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce through the year. They've got their eye on Alberta business. We asked them if they could round up some of the smartest people in the province, those that run in the political circles, many of them that work on policy, a lot of them that understand the economics and the business angles of the decisions that are being made, both by those that are deploying capital, those that are legislating, the elected officials, and otherwise. And so today we present our Eye on Alberta Year in Review. Now, it's not lost on us that things are happening outside Alberta that could influence where Alberta goes, that could influence the landscape, including an address no more than 13 hours before we're recording this episode and streaming it live from the President of the United States. There was a lot of talk about a lot of things, including inflation and prescription drugs, but in particular, I was curious to see what's going to develop, maybe even over the next few days, with Venezuela. When you think of Venezuela, you likely think of oil. When people think of Alberta, they think of oil. And the United States plays into both of these conversations. We're going to find out today if it might be the same conversation. And that's why we're bringing together leading government relations and advocacy professionals by way of this partnership with the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. You know that they're the ones in all these rooms to reflect on the major policy and economic developments that have shaped our home province over the past year or so. That to come in 30 seconds. First, I want to let you know that this episode does not happen without the presenting sponsorship of our friends at RapidX Financial. When a lot of people are watching markets, when a lot of people are watching where the economy is going, they're also paying attention to where crypto's going, and in particular, Bitcoin. RapidX Financial is a proud made-in-Alberta solution offering crypto your way through 3 easy channels. They've got more than 100 ATMs across the country, an online portal. That's what we're showing you at rapidxfinancial.com. You can use Interac e-transfer there, plus an over-the-counter desk for people like me who want a little extra help, who want to talk to a human being. With RapidX, you get real people ready to assist you with no hidden fees and absolutely no chatbots. So whether you're starting from scratch or growing your Bitcoin journey, RapidX makes it fast, easy, and secure. And right now, first-time users take 50% off all fees with the exclusive coupon code Ryan50 through the online portal. That's Ryan50 at rapidxfinancial.com. This is a limited-time offer to start crypto your way. Visit rapidxfinancial.com. Use Ryan50 at checkout. As we welcome back to studio, she is anchoring our Real Talk Roundtable today. She's the president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, Shauna Feth. It's nice to see you again. Thanks for making time for us.
You as well, my friend.
Yeah, I was like pleading with you days ahead. I said, do not integrate highway travel into the first couple of hours of your appearance here on the show, but you're here now in the Metro Edmonton region, safe and sound. For people that listen to this 3 months from now, this region has been absolutely pounded with snowfall over the past 24 hours. I'm glad you're here safe and sound.
Yeah, thanks for that. No, made the executive decision to stay in Edmonton last night. So
smart call.
Yeah, knew we were bright and early this morning. So.
Yeah, well, you're joined right here in our Mercer Warehouse studio, right here in downtown by Nathan Mison. Nathan with Diplomat Consulting and also a recipient of an Alberta Chambers of Commerce Alberta Business Award of Distinction. If I know anything about you, Nathan, you'll try to deflect on this. You won't want to talk about this, but it's nice to have you on the show.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. And it was an incredible honor. There's so many great businesses that do great things, and it was amazing for the recognition, especially because there was people that was much more deserving than us.
Yeah, well, see, trademark humility. I love that from Nathan. We're also going to head into rural areas. We're going to head down to Calgary. We want to make sure that we have comprehensive perspectives here around this Real Talk Roundtable, and it's a pleasure to welcome Michaela Frey to the program. Michaela representing the team at Alberta Council today, and of course, a lot of people will recognize Michaela as a former MLA. As a matter of fact, she's the one that vacated her seat so Alberta's current Premier, Danielle Smith, could seek that leadership, make her way into the legislature, and of course, begin to serve Albertans. Jason Hatcher is also joining us from Navigator. Jason, I guess you could say, Jason, is it fair, does double duty as well as the chair of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. It's nice to see you both.
Great to be back, Ryan.
Nice to see you, Ryan.
Yeah, Michaela, we haven't spoken for a while. It's nice to see your face again. We're grateful to have you back on the show. How have you been?
I've been great. I had a couple babies and took a break from the hustle and bustle of political life, and now I'm just easing my way back into it, so don't be too hard on me today.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, if I know anything, nobody ever fully steps out of those circles, and we want to give a shout-out to everybody that's doing double duty, raising families and also shaping the direction of the province and helping people better understand what's happening politically. I want to encourage all of you, as we do in our Real Talk roundtables here, to feel free to jump in on one another, build off each other's thoughts, take the conversation where you want it to go. I want to lead off with something in the news. Everybody's paying attention to what Donald Trump has to say and where he's going. Somewhat of some might say chaotic. Supporters would say comprehensive address to the nation over the past number of hours. But I want to go to the tarmac, to outside Air Force One before he spoke to the nation. Comments he made about Venezuela in particular. Not really at length, but it's what he's saying, I think, that is raising eyebrows around the world. Here's President Donald Trump on what's happening in Venezuela.
What was that?
Getting land, oil rights, whatever we had. They took it away because we had a president that maybe wasn't watching, but they're not going to do that. We want it back. They took our oil rights. We had a lot of oil there. As you know, they threw our companies out, and we want it back.
All right, so he says we had a lot of oil there. They took it, and we wanted it back. Trump built on that with a post on Truth Social, says Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will only get bigger, and the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before. Until such time as they return to the United States, all of the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. He goes on from there, but it's obviously ringing alarm bells for people that are expecting a declaration of war shortly. Nathan, you're nodding. I mean, the question and the mandate of this roundtable today is, what does this all mean for Alberta? But take us into your understanding of what's happening.
Well, I think one of the things that we have to take in consideration is October of 2026, the midterm elections are a pretty pivotal spot in the upcoming future of the U.S. And with the special elections and by-elections that have been happening in the U.S., it has not looked good for Republicans in the last little while. And there's a thinnest of margins that are actually keeping the House in place. And one of the things that Trump has been really fixated on in two terms that we've now seen is gas at the pump prices. Trump has made sure that he has gone out of his way to talk about having a sub $2 barrel or $2 a gallon barrel or at the pump. And, we've seen the consequences of that price in since January of this term. We now have a sub $55 barrel of oil in the world. JP Morgan 2 weeks ago said that by 2027, they're forecasting $36 a barrel. Well, one of the ways to do that is by going to one of the largest reserves of oil in the world and making sure that you have access to free and cheap oil to potentially bring and subsidize the domestic market. If you could go to the pump in the United States and have a sub $1.50 gallon of oil, would that get him the votes that he needs? And Trump has made it clear over two terms that is something that he is very preoccupied with. And this is a pretty scary extension of that. And one other one that I think affects Canada, and we'll talk about it today as well, is Venezuela also has one of the largest critical mineral deposits in the world. And as we know, critical minerals are something that is paying a lot of attention, considering it's the underpinning of the international industrial AI movement as well.
So, Shauna, people are no doubt going to look at what could be or maybe what will be conflict elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And of course, then they bring that home and they go, well, what does this mean for Canada, or what does this mean for Alberta? There's a million different angles of approach on here. But what storyline will you be following in the context of what it means for our home province?
Well, I think there's a few pieces here. It's so the price per barrel of oil that's being projected. Obviously, we know we base our Alberta budget on $68 a barrel. So what does that mean for our bottom line? in terms of our own provincial economy and what that's going to look like in the future. Also, you have to really think about that Canadian-U.S. relationship, and obviously from Alberta, that's one of our biggest exports, and what that's going to look like. I think we really too have to pay attention to the actual human consequences of what this is going to really evolve into, and what does that mean for the people of Venezuela as well, and how can Alberta reach out and support from a human perspective. I know we're really business focused here, and we really want to talk about that, but we can't as businesses underscore what that's going to be for the Venezuelan people and the impact that's going to have as well.
That is such a hugely important point, and I'm glad you make it. I don't want to become too obsessed or too focused here on the economic ramifications or the industry ramifications without acknowledging that this is something it will impact in potentially in horrific fashion, up to millions of people. Jason, when we talk about, the Trump order of a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela, what sort of an impact does that have on Canada, more particularly the western province of Alberta?
Look, we really need to watch going into 2026. Something I've discussed with my colleagues, former Minister Nixon and Jeremy Nixon and former Energy Minister Sonia Savage. We've been talking about this for a couple of months. We've finally sort of seen Trump pivot properly or not properly, but be a little more honest, I guess, in the last 24 hours. He really focused on affordability last night, but really we see this now. Sure, it came under the guise of drugs coming into the country. Obviously, that's an important thing to the U.S., but really, it's not the first time that we've seen a potential war conflict be about oil. And look, for Alberta, this is something we really got to watch. Nathan mentioned the price of oil, as did Shauna. We also have to really look at how those refineries are equipped in the U.S. Reality is those refineries down south can take on Venezuela oil. They're formulated that way for us, but they can also take on Venezuela oil. So there's some real competitive nature to this, to the price of oil, to potentially displacing some Canadian product down there. Now we do have some long-term contracts, so the industry is in good shape. But it is something we really have to watch. It can directly impact the economy here, and what we're trying to do and the Premier's trying to do going forward with the MOU that she signed with the federal government. So I think all of this is really going to play into how we're going to see things develop in the energy industry, I think in the first quarter or so of 2026.
Interesting comment here from RS in our live chat powered by Park Power. Says the dangerous part is that the President Trump is saying to countries, give me what I want or I'll take it. And Canada should be worried. More on that in a moment. Michaela, Nathan makes the point on the relationship between the price of oil and Alberta's budget. And I think that that's on everybody's radar. And we've talked about this in a number of different ways. Number one, how Alberta could diversify its economy at the same time, how if global oil demand is strong and Alberta has strong reserves and strong natural resources, then it makes sense, obviously, to maximize those. You've been there in the room as an elected official. You've been part of those types of conversations. How does this story land with you on the budget or the fiscal front?
Sure, Ryan. I mean, when you hear things like sub $40 per barrel of oil, I think that makes every caucus member in the UCP caucus start to really think about what that next budget cycle is going to look like. As many political watchers know right now, many organizations, many that we are trying to help, are preparing budget asks for the next year. And of course, we're all going to have to start to pivot and think about what the next year even looks like as far as funding goes. I know for me, for sure, I'll be watching for different programs that have been instituted this year. I'll be watching for the Premier's reaction within the next probably 24 hours. I think will be very telling on what this is going to look like for Alberta's budget, and kind of the framing that she's going to be going into the next even couple weeks with, considering this comment from the President.
Interesting comment from Jill, who says $36 a barrel oil means more defaults, trillions of liabilities having to be paid by Alberta taxpayers. He says, that obviously could put Alberta in a really tough spot. When I made the comment about Trump coming to take whatever he wants, Nathan, you were like nodding your head, like just in a way I couldn't ignore. Why did that land so strongly with you, aside from the obvious?
Well, I think that's one of the things that this year has been about. I think the Canada needs to reorganize its defense environment. And, defense doesn't happen just by bullets and missiles. It happens by trade and relationships. And I think, Canada under Prime Minister Mark Carney has been very succinct about changing the relationship tonnage around the world, spending a lot of time in Europe, musing about joining Eurovision to show how closely together we are with them. I think you're going to see a continued dedication to that. But, one of the ones that I think I take into consideration, and I think Jason's point about Q1 is a really important one. Canada still has made its commitment to fulfill its NATO obligations by March 31st of 2026. That's $11 to $13 billion that are still waiting to be deployed out of this federal budget cycle. That's a lot of money. So, the interesting thing is when we're having times of crises like that, the opportunity to actually use geopolitics to get the things that we want, to see money that is on the shelf waiting to be deployed to actually drive opportunity and economic possibility forward. And I think the Trump stances in the context of the 51st state comments, watching what Venezuela happens, it really puts defense and the spending that comes alongside it as a real interesting opportunity for economic forced diversification and infrastructure investment, so on and so forth, from a lot of money that the feds are going to deploy in the next little bit.
We're talking to Nathan Mison, Shauna Feth, Michaela Frey, and Jason Hatcher in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Edmonton 2000 in the chat says, Russia wants a war with NATO, and it will happen, in my view, says it's practically happening already. Sean, I had the lunch with a business leader, a significant business leader in Edmonton yesterday, and he said to me, when it comes to Trump and his eyes on Canadian resources, Canadian oil, what have you, he says, there could be that warfare that doesn't involve the guns and bullets, that doesn't involve the fighter planes. And CUSMA, our trade agreement with the United States, was one that he has squarely in his sights. That's one he's particularly concerned about, as somebody who does business on both sides of the border. You and I have had multiple conversations about this over the past year or so. What are your members telling you at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, and how are you sorting out what intuitive policy or what a prudent approach looks like into 2026?
Yeah, I think, this has been a conversation of many, many months. I think it just was really highlighted right from the beginning of the year when tariff talks started happening. And what is that going to mean potentially for our businesses and the business landscape? I think the critical piece of this is that reliability, sustainability piece. What does our policy look like in terms of how are we approaching these conversations and these negotiations? Because they're critically important, and we know that there's a lot of businesses at stake in terms of what that could look like if the conversations don't go well, and how many impacted businesses would look at increased tariffs or what that would mean to their bottom lines. The trade relationship in general, it's been tenuous this year, and so we really need to make sure that we shore that up, because it's having a direct impact on, looking at investment into Alberta, having businesses look at Canada as a jurisdiction that they want to invest into new technologies, into new industries. We talk about all the opportunities around renewable in Alberta, just as an example, but a lot of that has been put on hold just because people don't know what the climate looks like, and we aren't sure what the environment's going to be like, 6, 8, 10 months, 12 months from now.
Yeah. Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
I think, it's an interesting thing that I completely agree. Predictability and sustainability are one of the most important things that are in an environment for entrepreneurs. It's interesting that we talk about the next 8 to 10 months and that vulnerability and the nervousness. I actually think it provides an incredible opportunity. I think that one of the things that we should think about as Edmontonians and Albertans is maybe it's time to ask American businesses if they want to move to Canada. I think that when you think about the unpredictability in a sustainable regulatory environment that is the United States, where they've had 400 tariff changes since Independence Day, that maybe we should be looking as an opportunity that we should be actually opening our arms and opening our hands to American businesses and intelligence that comes alongside that. I note the fact that the federal government put $1.7 billion into the initiative to bring American researchers and H-1B visa holders to Canada. I actually think there's an incredible opportunity to do the most un-Canadian thing and apologize while we're bringing American businesses up here instead of us worrying about the other way. And I think that's a great opportunity that as leaders, we need to maybe push our chests back a little bit and push those shoulders back and see it as an opportunity instead of a threat.
Jason, do you see it that way or do you see it differently?
Look, this is people talk about whether things will change at the midterms or whatnot. This is the new normal, if you will. Democrats have not been traditionally free traders. So the idea that, the Democrats will switch up a little bit and get some more power in the House of the Congress in the next fall, and suddenly things will change, or in 4 years from now, we'll have a different approach with a different president. I don't think we can count on that. I think that we've got to focus right now on a competitive environment. This is something Alberta's always traditionally done well. And we are in competition, not just with the U.S., but with other countries now that recognize they also have to diversify their markets. So I think it's fundamental, whether it's governments in Ottawa or governments in Edmonton, we need to create the most competitive environment that we possibly can from a taxation standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, in order to attract those businesses in the long term. And I think we can be apologetic and unapologetic at the same time, because we've got to create that environment. We've got to diversify our markets and at the same time attract those businesses. That should be our focus for governments and for policymakers in the coming year. And we've got to get on it quickly, because Canada traditionally doesn't move fast. Alberta's a bit of an exception to that. I think we move quicker than most, but we can't do it alone. Governments have to move very, very quickly right now in this competitive environment. We got to move. And the second capital markets see us slowing down even a little bit, we don't have enough capital in this country to develop our vast resources. We need that global capital markets to invest here in Canada. And they're looking around. They've got options right now. So we've got to do what we can to attract that capital investment. And if we pause even for a minute or stumble or go back and look like we're slowing down and double regulatory processes that we've seen in the past, then capital markets, the eye is going to go elsewhere. We've got to focus and make ourselves attractive to that investment here in Canada and here in Alberta.
In our live chat, powered by Park Power, Jordan says, all this separation talk is going to do wonders for investment in Alberta. Michaela, how much of in your assessment, how much of a liability is the buzz or the talk or the initiative around separation?
Look, I'm from a part of the province where things get a little wild at times. I'm from Southern Alberta, and we're not known for being particularly governable. And I think, when we have talk about separation, that doesn't help capital markets, of course, and we saw what that did in Quebec. But I think the real test right now is going to be how governments react to that talk of separation. I mean, I saw the Premier recently on your show, Ryan. She said, she's fighting for Alberta within United Canada. I think we need to continue that sort of conversation. As well, we need to remember that just because there are some people who are quite loud, the separatists being quite vocal, they're not always the most numerous. So I would just encourage elected officials to stay the course and stiff upper lip on that.
What do you think?
Go ahead,
Jim.
If I could just jump in. Capital markets don't understand the nuances of referendum and whatnot. They just hear there's a separation movement, and that creates concern. And that's that kind of pause that we're talking about. Look, I think Michaela's 100% right. The Premier has been clear that she's fighting for Alberta within Canada. But even this talk of separation can create real challenges for attracting capital, to attracting investment, to attracting some of those businesses that Nathan talked about coming up from the U.S.
You're nodding your head, Shauna.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we're really working on at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce is just doing a real deep dive analysis into what actually happened in Quebec, and as a business case of what potentially could be the ramifications to our business community in the province. I mean, we know
it was brutal for Quebec, for Montreal in particular, right?
Absolutely.
Used to be the biggest city in Canada, right?
Exactly.
First referendum.
Exactly. And then we saw there was a mass exodus of major businesses, major companies that never came back. There were ones that were impacted and are still impacted to this day because of some of those decisions, investment decisions that, went other ways because there was the threat of referendum and what that meant. To those.
So you're not even saying the threat of separation. You're saying the threat of referendum.
Absolutely. Just even calling for a referendum, what does that mean? And we really need to be thoughtful about balancing. There are arguments on both sides, and there's reasons why this is happening, but balancing that with what is the actual economic impact that this is going to have. And we really need to be paying attention to that.
Jason said it, and Shauna, you said it. It's business wants predictability.
Yeah.
Capital wants predictability, right? Like when you think about some of the big money that is going to need to be deployed around the world, the pension funds, the sovereign wealth funds, you're talking about 5 to 8% return per year. That's all they care about. 5 to 8, 5 to 8, 5 to 8. That will not happen underneath even the threat of possibility. You know, I was lucky enough to be in Toronto quite a bit in the last little while on Bay Street, raising some money for an economic venture. And I'll tell you, the conversations that I have been having, I'm going to steal Michaela's word here, is the question about ungovernable is something that has been brought up quite a bit about what is going on in Alberta, right? Like we see so many positive things, the nation building projects, but what's going on because money wants predictability. And that even the perception of unpredictability makes it very difficult to actually see the deployment of money that needs to be had when you're talking about mining projects, major, like billions and billions and billions of dollars of future forward investments, because the kind of economy that we need to have is stuff that doesn't get opened in a year and a half. It gets opened in 5, 10, 15 years. So I think you hit the nail on the head.
Okay, I want to put this in front of the group. So whoever wants to speak to this, just jump in. In our live chat, Kyle says, I disagree. He says, I think a separation referendum would spur more investment because it will show business that Alberta is freeing itself from Ottawa's shackles.
Ryan, I jump in on that right away. I think we have this tendency as conservatives to, I know for me, there are a lot of elements of the party, like I said, who are quite loud. And I've heard this argument time and time again. But at the end of the day, what happens when elements of the party are speaking out like this is we have a real tension with what the premier is trying to do. And I think back to what's happening right now with the signing of the MOU, I think that's a really positive step forward for predictability and stability. And I would just hate to see all of that good work being undone or jeopardized by a few people with very loud voices. So for me, I know I'm a fan of boring, competent government. You know, I want to see painfully boring competence out of my government. And that means I don't really want to know what the issue du jour is. I just want to know that my government's going to be able to handle it. And I think with the signing of this MOU, it lays that groundwork for a predictable, stable environment, some positive relationship between the federal government and Alberta, which was a rarity over the Trudeau years. So I'm looking forward with optimism, but I think, there is going to be a point where the party may have to check some of the more robust factions.
Okay, I want to give our panelists an opportunity to top up their coffees real quick. We're hanging out with Nathan Mison from Diplomat Consulting, Shauna Feth, President and CEO, Alberta Chambers of Commerce, Michaela Frey joining us from Alberta Council, and Jason Hatcher joining us from Navigator. It's our Eye on Alberta year in review, and a big part of this is what Real Talkers are telling us in our live chat, powered by Park Power. If you go to parkpower.ca right now, you can learn a little bit more about this company. This is a grassroots Alberta company that we're so proud to partner with, your friendly local utilities provider on electricity, natural gas, and internet. You can view their plans today. I mean, in simple and plain language, here's what you're going to discover. You'll discover what Johnny and I discovered, which is you'll get the same or better service, including internet. You'll just pay less. You'll keep more money in your pocket with quality utilities service. And they're so confident in this that they'll call or contact your current utilities provider to break up with them on your behalf, so you don't have to have the awkward conversation. And there's no cancellation fees with Park Power. So if you don't like what you get, in that rare circumstance, you can walk away without penalty. If you go to parkpower.ca/realtalk, you'll find exclusive promo codes that could save you up to $150 off your first bill if you bundle internet, electricity, and natural gas. That's parkpower.ca/Real Talk. We've heard from our friends at California Closets. We know for a fact that some of you Real Talkers are taking our gift idea. You're going to take your loved one out for lunch, maybe have a glass of wine, and then you're going to go to your free consultation with a California Closets designer. That's where you can sit down, you can talk about the space, you can talk about your vision, you can talk about your budget, and then they can get to work designing an installation that'll be manufactured right here in Alberta by this Canadian-owned company. It'll be guaranteed for life, and just like it did did 8 years ago with my wife and I, it'll blow your mind. We did a walk-in closet in the primary bedroom and an entertainment center. It's where we put our kids' games and puzzles. It looks perfect. Just as good as it did the day it was installed. You can check out the different budget levels and sign up for that free consultation today by visiting californiaclosets.ca. North Road Investment Council recognizing that December is a month of generous giving. There's a lot of businesses, a lot of individuals out there that are going to be looking to the charities that they support this month, but you may, if you're not paying attention to some opportunities, be given more money to the CRA than you have to and less to your charity of choice. With appreciated investments, if you donate things like stocks, ETFs, mutual funds that have grown in value directly to the charity, you can avoid the capital gains tax on those appreciated securities. It's totally exempt. Plus, personal donors can access generous federal and provincial tax credits. Business owners can receive strong corporate tax deductions. This is what North Road Investment Council does. Make the most of the rules so your generosity can go further. If you'd like to learn more about intelligent giving strategies, you can reach out to Marshall, Carey, and the team at northroadic.com. And of course, as we're talking about philanthropy, you know how proud we are to be supporting the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation as they mark a century and a quarter at the Royal Alex Hospital. It is unbelievable. 125 years. The doctors, nurses, the surgeons, the porters, the custodians, the cafeteria workers, the team at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation has been doing incredible work through the hospital that we just call the Alex. You can visit royalalex.org if you want to learn more. They've got a beautiful commemorative book you can purchase at royalalex.org/125 years. And of course, you can consider a donation in honor of someone you love by visiting their website. Don't forget, every Tuesday here on Real Talk, we feature Echoes of the Alex. And we'd love to hear your family's story of how the Royal Alex made a real impact in your life. That story, the Echo of the Alex, you can send it to us at talk@ryanjesperson.com. We've got our eye on Alberta today in partnership with the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. If you're just joining our live stream presented by California Closets, Shauna Feth in the House President and CEO of Alberta Chambers, Nathan Mison with Diplomat Consulting, Michaela Frey with Alberta Counsel, and Jason Hatcher joining us from Navigator. Jason also the chair of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. Let's talk about 2025, a year in review. I want to hit politics. I want to hit business. I want to hit the regulatory landscape. What did 2025 reveal about public confidence in political leadership, Shauna, from your vantage point?
Well, maybe I'll talk about business confidence, and that is public confidence at the end of the day. But I think what happened is we had this vacuum in Ottawa. At the beginning of the year, there was a huge vacuum, and we filled it. We had Premier step up to negotiate with the U.S. to look at trade relations. As a chamber, we ourselves stepped up. We formed a coalition of the Chambers of the Federation to talk about, okay, so if we're dealing with this really strained relationship with the states, how can we alleviate that internally? Really talked about some of those critical things like interprovincial trade barriers, which we've just seen so many reductions there. I mean, there's still more to go, as Nathan knows, alcohol and some different food products that we need to really pay attention to. But a lot of that came down. And also really looking at what do those economic corridors look like. And so I think, Carney has, he repealed a bunch of legislation that was really harmful to a lot of Alberta companies. And now with this signing of the MOU, I think that's just another great indicator for where we're going in 2026, and that, Ottawa is now paying attention to Alberta. And I think, we just talked about separation, but that was a lot of why this rhetoric began, is because Alberta felt like it was not being treated fairly within the Confederation. And I think now with the signing of this MOU, it's a great step forward. And I'll just plug, is it really ticked off tons of Alberta Chamber policies that we've been really advocating on behalf of.
In a good way, it ticked the boxes,
very,
yeah.
Very good way. And now really going into 2026, it's going to be what action is happening and how quickly, because that's the other thing. It's like it's an announcement, it's great, but we need to see action, and how is that going to move forward? We already see some, there's some resistance from BC, and really need to be considering what is that going to look like from a national projects perspective? How is that going to work with the new projects office? And really, I think we can be positive about the fact that we're moving in this direction, but it's really going to be about when do we get shovels in the ground and how quickly can we get those approvals through, because that's always been the issue. And so if that one project, one approval process actually comes to fruition, that's going to have a huge impact as well.
I'll circle back on the BC thing because it's not a small thing.
No,
and when
not.
you talk about political leadership, we're going to have to talk about the relationship between Premier Smith and Eby for sure. But on the Smith-Carney relationship, I mean, I can't think of how many times that MOU has been cited by expert guests on this show in the past month. I mean, it's just, it almost factors into every single conversation. But Jason, even before then, the establishment by Ottawa of the Major Projects Office in Calgary, I mean, how big was that? Take us into your perspective on it.
Listen, I think that was a very significant sign, an early sign from the Carney government, and also putting Don Farrell, who's incredibly respected around this province, in this city, and across the country, someone who has come in and completed projects and done an incredible job in leadership. I think those two things were huge signs from the Carney government, early signs. Of course, the MOU is important, and I think what both of those sort of things have happened, and this notion that we're going to streamline our regulatory processes and not duplicate them, that's given some hope, and hope is really important for business. But I'm going to say that confidence in that hope is also fragile, and I think Shauna made some really good points. We need to see action on all levels of government right now. I think talking to the business community here in Calgary, we had Mr. Carney here a couple of weeks ago. There was that hope, and as they said, lowering that temperature, that political temperature between Ottawa and Edmonton, was really critical. And both leaders spent an awful lot of political capital to get that done. Now we need to see action, and we need to keep making that environment so that action ultimately occurs. And I think, similarly, public confidence, you asked about that a moment ago, Ryan, is similarly kind of thin and very fragile. You saw that with Mr. Trump last night. He went right back to affordability. He recognizes that people right now are looking at things, as businesses are, through their own personal lens. They're very selfish, if you will, and they're looking at it through their household. How am I going to pay my bills? What does this mean for the future of my kids? What does this mean for the future of my business and my employees? And that's the lens people are looking through. And frankly, if people aren't going to deliver on that, whether it's in Ottawa or provincial governments and municipally, there's going to be a throw the bums out kind of attitude. You're either going to deliver for me or I'm going to seek change. And I think all governments of all political stripes need to heed that and need to keep pushing forward to create the kind of environment that's going to spur economic investment, that's going to spur job creation. And that's something that's really critical. Our unemployment rate here in this province still is slightly above the national average. And, that's got to be a focus. We've talked earlier today about the challenges to the provincial coffers. These are the sort of things that erode confidence if we don't see the action, the delivery, as Shauna said, on some of the promises and the excitement that was generated around the MOU, and also some of the other initiatives we've seen both at Edmonton and Ottawa.
Michaela and Nathan, I'll come back to you on this line of thinking. Michaela, I want to ask you in particular about the Smith-Eby relationship, but I want to build off something that Jason just put in front of us. If Alberta unemployment numbers are higher than the national average in a province that's advertising that Alberta is calling, where there's great economic opportunity, where things are happening, why is that? Speak freely. Anyone on the panel, why is that? What's your thought, or how do you address this?
Too many people are moving here too fast. We can't keep up.
It's
right?
that simple?
When you look at the fact that we've had, 1 million people move to the province in the last 7 years, the consequences of that are profound. Somebody told me a great stat, and I love useless statistics. Unfortunately, it's an addiction. But it's Edmonton to have the 200,000 people that have moved to the city in the last 5 years would mean you'd have to build 175 houses a day to do it. You just can't keep up. So, our political class has to have a real honest conversation about the wonderful thing about net migration is great, right? More people means that there should be the more generation of more taxation and more revenue. But the consequences to the infrastructure and the environment and the underpinning is pretty profound. So we have to figure out how to have the kind of jump in jobs that go along with the people that we're having. It came out this week that Canada has had the first net migration in the last 30 years, in the fact that our population actually shrunk last month. So, I think it's just...
Do you take a sigh of relief when you see that?
No, we can get into demographics, but of the G7, of the G20, we're the only nation state that right now is growing. Like, we have a really interesting conversation and a push and pull between an older population and a younger population that's going to have to pay for a population. 33% of Canadians retire in the next 10 years. Right? Those are people that are going to go from the highest tax users, or the highest tax contributors, to the highest tax users right away. And when you think about the fact that Edmonton and Calgary are two of the youngest cities in North America, that's great for us because we'll have the people that'll have the jobs in the future. But the consequences on our civil society, on the cost of how to do it, is pretty profound. And it's going to be very interesting to see how we're going to be able to keep those things going.
So, Michaela,
at the same time,
go ahead, Jay.
Ironically, at the same time, we're going to be in a really competitive environment for skilled labor, right? BC has got 5 of the first projects that have come out from the Major Projects Office. We've always seen that skilled labor sort of compete back and forth the border between Alberta and BC. And we're hoping to get some of those major projects as well. So, I completely agree with the comments that have been made, but we also have this skilled labor shortage and competition that's going on. And that's going to be right between us and BC right out of the gates here.
And Shauna spoke to this too. And Jason, that's an excellent point, is the fact that one of the big things that was understated about the interprovincial trade barriers going down was the actual ability for labor and skilled labor to move across the country. Now, the challenge is when you move great skilled labor from Atlantic Canada or Quebec or Ontario to Alberta or BC to follow national projects, where do they live, right? Like, the consequences comes to it as well. So you can find labor, but then the consequences of that labor to fill those jobs has an actual intrinsic consequence as well that follows along with it.
Well, and who replaces them in those jurisdictions where they just left, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I was just going to add to Nathan's point, and it's not just housing, it's everything. It's all the wraparound services, it's the social services, it's the schools, it's the healthcare.
It's roads.
It's infrastructure, it's all of the things that need to follow when you have that much of a population increase.
So, Michaela, what does intuitive provincial government policy look like in light of all of this? I mean, there's a lot on that plate that we've just put on the table.
Yeah, I would say measured growth is what we need. Right now we experienced a period of large growth. I remember being in the room when the Alberta's Calling campaign was introduced to caucus. And, it was, at the time, it was a very forward thinking. It was important. It was essential for Alberta going forward, is to bring people who are formerly moving to Toronto or Vancouver to Calgary and Edmonton for a lower cost of living and availability of housing. But I think now, we have to really switch gears. Does Alberta necessarily need to be calling anymore? I'm not quite convinced. So maybe we should put down the phones a little bit, but we are going to have to see what that looks like going forward. I think Premier Smith is starting to speak about immigration much more forcefully. It's becoming more of a talking point in conservative circles. It's becoming more acceptable to start talking about levels of immigration and net immigration. It's two sides of a sword, right? I mean, you want immigration, you want net immigration, you want people moving to your province. That's a really good signal economically, but also, how do you deal with that? Healthcare, schools, everything else that comes along with it. Housing's been mentioned a couple times. So I think measured, manageable growth is something that we need to be targeting. Of course, we want people to continue to move to Alberta, but at the rate that we're seeing right now, it's just not tenable.
Can I jump in here just one quick thing? I think there's going to be a really interesting conversation in 2026 about the roles in cities in Canada. 5 of the largest economies in the country, or 6 of the largest economies in the country of Canada are cities. Right, but of the taxation, they only collect 8 cents of every tax dollar that's created in that. Right, 52 cents goes to the federal government, 40 cents goes to the provinces, and for the first time ever in 2025, the Edmonton-Red Deer-Calgary corridor now represents 81% of the population of the province of Alberta.
81%.
81%. So, it's a really interesting conversation when it actually comes to the fact that where people live and the economic power that goes along with that is going to be a really interesting tension, because our Constitution and our interplay between cities, provinces, and territories and the federal government is perhaps a little bit going to be strained because of some of that net migration into those cities that we've talked about and the consequences of roads, hospitals, so on and so forth, because the money that's going to need to go along with that is so profound that the provincial government is not going to be able to keep up. So how are we going to actually see that tension and that consequences coming from the federal government with some of the decisions and the monies that they're looking to deploy in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, the relationship between the cities and the province, the municipalities and the province has been one of probably the big storylines of the past couple of years. Of the past year, and interesting developments with new mayors in both of those major cities in particular. And I guess that's kind of a wait and see for 2026. I do want to ask about 2026 and what's coming up, and maybe something that's not necessarily on anyone's radar when it comes to the economy or regulatory changes or political developments, of course. But aside from the headlines of the year, when you look back at 2025, Shauna, all things considered, take the question wherever you like. What changed in a lasting way that will still matter in 2026? In other words, what's one of the more enduring, more significant, most relevant changes that you saw in the landscape we're describing in 2025?
I think the relationship between the provinces.
That's the key?
It's key in terms of, for us, from an Alberta Chambers perspective, we reinforced and created some really strong relationships with our colleagues across the country. Again, I've already said to enhance things like interprovincial trade, economic corridors, looking at procurement. But what that also has created is this opportunity for us to look at how do we better support our local Alberta businesses to look at new markets within Canada. And so that's a really critical piece too, is that, we've talked a lot in the last few years. It's been on everybody's radar about nearshoring and making sure that we can provide market access to our people in Canada, within Canada. And so I guess this is kind of a platform for me, but really excited to announce that we just received $3.5 million to do trade missions internally in the country. And we just did the pilot in Winnipeg on Monday and Tuesday of this week.
What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so we took some heavy manufacturers from Alberta. We took them to Winnipeg and we toured Fort Garry fire trucks. We looked at New Flyer Industries, so heavy manufacturers that are doing amazing things and need the services that some of our Alberta manufacturers provide. And so it's about creating those relationships. It's also about standing up the platform supplyflow.net, which is really about creating that transparency and discoverability for our manufacturers, for all industries across the country. So investments are being made into looking forward 2026 and beyond on how do we really ensure that within Canada we're doing the best job possible to buy Canadian, to produce Canadian. Again, New Flyer, great example of this. They were back in 2019 already looking at their purely Canadian promotion and how their buses are, from start to finish are produced by Canadian parts and materials. So how do we tackle that in a way that we can go from east to west and really look at providing opportunities? And I think that's the biggest positive thing that's come out of this for us anyway, in terms of how do we support Alberta businesses and how do we provide them with market access and diversification opportunities that potentially don't have to go to new markets.
Michaela, a 2025 story or development or trend that you think will last, endure, or perhaps even strengthen in 2026?
I think 2025 is a total shakeup of what we know as normal when it comes to Canada-US relations. Even we see some Alberta-Ottawa relations that have changed there. So I think going into 2026, what I'm going to be looking at is how are we nurturing the businesses like Shauna was saying that are in Alberta? How are we strengthening those industries outside of oil and gas? I mean, I think of the agriculture industry, they have a great story to tell. It's really our superpower here in the South. We heard there was a lot of pressure around canola, a lot of pressure around our agriculture industry and getting our products to market and the related tariffs that are on those goods. So I think governments are going to have to pivot big time in 2026. And what we've seen in 2025 is that we can't just continue to do things the way we've always done them just for the sake of it. So I think looking for new opportunities, this includes diversifying for things like data centers, looking at our data sovereignty here in Alberta, looking at sovereignty on all fronts, just ways to shore up our own local economies so that we can weather the storm. Because like Jason said, I think this is, I hate the term new normal for the past, however many years that we had to use it, but it really is. I think this is kind of how it's going to be for the next, see how hard I'm trying not to use the term new normal, but it's how it's going to be for the next while, right?
You didn't pair it up by saying it's the new normal, so we'll have to think outside the box. That would have been the double whammy we could not have tolerated.
If I started saying circle back,
I thought you were ungovernable there, so well, there you go.
Yeah. Jason, how would you answer the same question?
Yeah, look, the easy answer is it's the big change in 2025, and everything flows from it was the election of Donald Trump, right? Because everything that we've talked about has really been spurred on for that. But I want to pick up on what Shauna was saying. I think what I'm looking for going into 2026 is, are we going to be able to stay out of our own way, right? We had this great sort of kumbaya moments along the way here where all the premiers held hands in the spring and going into the summer, and everybody was going to work together. We're already seeing that fraying. It's only been a handful of months, and this MOU obviously has been a part of the catalyst around that. But again, how are we going to work together as provinces to attract that capital that I talked about earlier, and how are we going to work together and recognize that one province's success is another province's success is a country's success. And we see that right now with British Columbia. They've got 5 of the major projects, as we talked about earlier, and they're already saber rattling around Alberta. And look, we understand how complex a pipeline is to the northwest coast of British Columbia. But hard things shouldn't be catalysts for political rhetoric. We need to focus on the good of the country and the good of the economy. So I think that's what I'm really looking for. Are we going to put aside our political ambitions, if you will? And I know that's hard for politicians to do because by definition they want to get reelected. But we need right now the kind of leadership that, frankly, we saw going into this MOU, that political capital that was spent on both sides to put some sort of tensions aside, put some dogma aside, and say, look, we've got to get some things done. And Premier had a great line at the convention, and that's we need to put our fists down and roll our sleeves up. And I think that's counsel we should all take, and all the premiers should really look hard at themselves and say, how can we do this? How can we work together? And how can we benefit both sides of this? That's what needs to happen in 2026.
Okay, I am going to come to you, Nathan, but Jason, in follow-up, so how does that translate? And Michaela, I mean, you served for a time as chief of staff to Alberta's premier, so I'm going to ask you too. But what does that mean in the context of Alberta, BC relations, Jason? What does putting the fist down look like? And it strikes me, and I think it probably strikes any common sense person, that those two premiers, Eby and Smith, are at loggerheads, and Eby, coming across as quite defiant when it comes to new pipeline access to the northwest coast. Now there's talk about maybe a concession of a TMX expansion and the like. But how do you see that playing out, and how does that relationship between those two premiers factor into it all?
Yeah, well, for Premier Eby, I'll just say this, for a guy who said there was no pipeline, there's no proponent, there's nothing to talk about, he's been talking about it, frankly, as much or more than Premier Smith. And that's the politics of this. And, I think, look, the reality is, we have seen movement in British Columbia. All of a sudden now natural gas is really important and is being supported. Critical minerals, the same sort of thing. Even the expansion of TMX. So we're going to see expansions of pipeline. We also see Enbridge Mainline potentially expanding coming up the next year. And that's going to bring, capacity wise from a pipeline or an egress perspective, we're looking at, upwards of 750,000 barrels a day. That's great. But the reality is that, Mr. Eby has got to look at more beyond his own political ambition. And he's got to look at not just the economics of the country, but the economics of BC, and they benefit from these kind of projects as well. So what does it look like? I don't know. I've seen this province's government here in Alberta reach out. We've seen Minister Sawney trying to reach out to Indigenous leaders. They're being proactive. They haven't been combative. There hasn't been threats. I think that kind of lowering of the temperature, that lowering of the rhetoric is helpful and sets the environment and the stage for this. And we've got to see more of that out of British Columbia, bluntly speaking.
Can I jump in? I think there's a really important part that we sometimes forget about this context is BC's in a minority government held together by 2 Green seats. The Green are the most powerful people in the province of British Columbia, and Eby is doing everything to hold to those 2 seats because at any time he can fall because of it. So what we have to take into consideration is he has to play the line for the significant environmentalists who hold the balance of power that he enjoys. And I think for us to not take that into consideration would be a real miss when we're thinking about the political calculus. Is Eby is only talking to those 2 people when he makes those conversations. Or else he would be talking very differently about the Cowichan conversation, which is a very big thing that we haven't talked about. He would be talking about very different things. But he has 2 seats that are holding him in power. And that's, I think, needs to be taken in conversation and consideration with all of this conversation.
Okay, so Michaela, as mentioned, you've served as chief of staff to Alberta's premier. How does she need to manage this? I mean, a lot of people would have never seen, maybe they say, well, I don't know if I'm going to see Danielle Smith be able to work with David Eby on this, considering their significant ideological differences. But those same people probably didn't see Danielle Smith signing an MOU with the Liberal Prime Minister. I mean, has that given you some thought to consider?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was chief of staff in intergovernmental relations for the premier, and I was in the room when she had these conversations, particularly with Premier Eby. And without saying too much, I mean, the conversations behind closed doors are a heck of a lot different than they are in the media, right?
You can tell us about the closed doors stuff. Go ahead. You can spill the beans. We're fine with it.
We're
okay with it.
These are reasonable, exceedingly reasonable people on both sides of the debate. And I think, like you said, there's political calculus and maneuvering that needs to happen. And those 2 Green seats are obviously going to play into that. But I mean, it's incumbent upon Alberta's side of this to make the case for that pipeline, to make that case for our ethically produced oil to get to market. And I think, Premier Smith is going to be trying to figure out how she manages that relationship with Premier Eby. I think a lot of this will be done at the COF table, so the Council of the Federation. Premier Smith is very persuasive at the COF table. I've seen her work that room. She's very likable. She makes sure she has a lot of respect from other premiers. And I think, building that case for Team Alberta from across Canada will be very helpful in maybe helping Premier Eby see an off-ramp where he isn't losing too much political capital. But like Jason, I believe it was Jason who said, there's going to have to be some push and pull from both sides here. And knowing how the Premier operates, this is something that's occupying her mind probably 100% of the time right now. So.
Okay, I want to wrap on something. The time has flown here. I've appreciated all of your insights. Jason, we'll come to you first on this one. As we wrap, what policy or legislation, what economic risk or opportunity coming in 2026 is not getting enough attention right now?
We touched on it earlier. I think it's Venezuela. I think that could have a massive impact on the coppers here in Alberta, potentially, on how oil prices are set. We've talked about it a lot recently because we've seen the saber rattling, but this has been cooking for a while here now between the U.S. administration and Venezuela, and it is about oil. That's been outed. We know what it's about now. And I think that's what we need to watch. I know it's gotten some attention recently, but that's something that wasn't talked about in the oil context, and that's what I'm watching for in early 2026.
Okay, Michaela.
I would echo what Jason said and how this reflects on the budget. I think, there's going to be a very difficult budget coming. We as Conservatives like to run balanced budgets, and that just might not be possible. Given the realities that we're facing. Usually we write a budget for $65, $50 some dollars per barrel, but I don't think we've ever, and I could be corrected on this, but I'm not sure we've ever written a budget for 38 or 36. So things might look very different given the growing demands on our province. So I think what I'll be watching is how the government of Alberta reacts to these very real changes in our economic climate.
Nathan?
2024-2025 was the first time in recorded history the Northwest Passage didn't freeze. The fact that, Canada controls the greatest transportation corridor between the Pacific and Atlantic, which is 55% faster than the Panama Canal and 75% faster than the Suez Canal, is probably one of the greatest things that we are not talking about. We're talking about Arctic sovereignty, we're talking about northern defense, but the fact that that transportation corridor has now opened and the investment that's going to go along with it, we're talking about tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars that could go along with it, potentially and the reorganization of international transportation is a pretty big deal. And Edmonton and Alberta are going to have a significant role in that because of the 4 million Canadians that don't live within 100% or 100 kilometers of the American border. It's Edmonton or service by Edmonton. And the economic opportunities that are going to come about are generational, and we should be putting our eyes on that pretty unequivocally.
Generational economic opportunities will get people's attention when you say that on a podcast, Nathan. You know what you're doing. Shauna, last word to you.
Yeah, I just echo everything the panelists have already said. All are on our radar in terms of, everything from what does, the budget look like next year, what's happening in Venezuela, but also, all of the significant defense spending that's going to happen going into the new year. There's billions of dollars that need to be spent before March 31st. So how are we supporting our businesses to really, take advantage of that? And to Nathan's point, how do we look at, that pipeline, that corridor to the north as some new uncharted territory? So there's lots to look at. Obviously, ACC, we're always focused on, talent and making sure talent comes in. Always looking at, like I said already, supply chains and how do we create new opportunities within the country. Those are going to be really some of our focuses for the next year to make sure that businesses have what they need to do business and to thrive and prosper in 2026.
There's a ton of resources for business owners and operators, entrepreneurs, and of course those interested in what's happening across the province on the Alberta Chambers of Commerce website. You can check that out at abchamber.ca. Shauna Feth is president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. She has been joined in our historic Mercer Warehouse studio by Nathan Mison from Diplomat Consulting, a recipient of an Alberta Business Award of Distinction. Michaela Frey joining us, a former MLA, of course, and speaking on behalf of Alberta Council today, and Jason Hatcher, chair of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, also with Navigator. Thanks to all of you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. And thanks for doing this. We appreciate your insights.
You too, Ryan.
Merry Christmas, Ryan.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Ryan.
guys.
Christmas, guys.
Great to see you
Take
all.
care.
Thanks, guys, for doing this. We appreciate you as well. These conversations will continue, Real Talkers. As you know, we're going to jump into our live chat in just a moment. Talk@ryanjesperson.com is where you can send us your thoughts. Most of you will be listening to this or watching this later. You can always leave a comment on our YouTube episodes as well or on Spotify. These conversations happen with the support of Real Talk partners like our friends at The Helm. You can browse them online at thehelmclothing.com. Johnny and I are always encouraging you to check out their 3-story downtown Edmonton retail experience, and we use that word on purpose, a retail experience, because that's exactly what it is. Absolutely stunning. But if you check out their website, thehelmclothing.com, there's a couple of reasons why I'd recommend. I mean, if you're out of town or maybe you're just snowed in, they've got their 2025 gift guide out. This is a beautifully curated collection that'll kind of appeal to anybody looking for luxury casual wear all the way up to the custom suits. Of course, they do beautiful footwear as well. All of it at thehelmclothing.com. And exclusively to Real Talkers, if you use the promo code REALTALK, all one word, REALTALK, at checkout at thehelmclothing.com, they're going to knock 10% off your entire order. That's a big deal. I recommend the Page Denim. I absolutely love it. You can also find Brunello Cucinelli in there. That's one of my favorites for I don't know, Johnny, is it my signature look? The blazer and jeans?
People don't see your real signature look. He puts on jogging pants right after the show and a hoodie with stains.
Not true.
I'm joking.
Not true. The blazer and jeans look is what I pull off whenever I go see Chad and his team at The Helm. They also, of course, have gift cards. Give the gift of choice. TheHelmClothing.com, promo code REALTALK, knocks off 10%. I wonder if they do like luxury casual sweats.
Yeah, I love like the sweat suits.
Top, bottom.
No, I'm talking like it's a blazer made out of sweater material.
Oh,
yeah.
What?
Walking around looking like Jespo on air while sitting on the couch with popcorn.
I like where we're going with this. Hey, listen, like Johnny's with his comment, he's joking, but you know it's what he's saying is he's resonating with us because we all want to do that. We all want to relax. We all want to be comfortable, and that includes your holiday hosting. Whether it's Hanukkah, Christmas, or another celebration, our friends at Friesen Brothers have you covered. They've got a team of Red Seal chefs, and these are chef-prepared meals that we're talking to you about at Friesen.com, or you can go directly to cateringbyfriesen.com. That's Freson.com. Our family enjoyed one of these just last week. You can check out my wife's Instagram at Carrie Skelton if you want to see more about it. But let Friesen Brothers and Catering by Friesen Brothers handle your holiday dinners while you enjoy the magic of the holidays with your family and friends. These signature Christmas meals feed up to 6 people. That includes everything you need: roasted turkey, scalloped potatoes, creamy dill, carrots, granny stuffing, Caesar salad, tray buns, cranberry sauce, turkey gravy, apple crumble pie. They've got it all. A stress-free holiday meal for 6 for just $229. You can pick those up in Edmonton, Glenora, Edmonton, Rabbit Hill, Fort Saskatchewan, and Stony Plain locations. Order today at cateringbyfriesen.com. They've also got a chef-prepared Christmas meal for 4 for just $99. It looks a little bit different. You can check it out on the website. Again, that's cateringbyfriesen.com. And as we are, of course, thinking about what the holidays will look like for us, we also, don't we? We do. We consider others. And if that is where your head is at, if that's where your heart's at right now, we encourage you to check out ucan.ca. That's UCAN Youth Services. It's our charity of choice this year, a nonprofit that does amazing work helping young people out of harm's way. In a lot of instances, guys, they're like literally just being released from juvie, and then the team at UCAN meets up with them. Like, they're starting in many cases almost from scratch, helping these young people find housing, connecting them with supportive peer groups, helping them understand how to apply for jobs, what employers are looking for. Well, you can help give the gift of confidence this Christmas by stuffing a stocking at ucan.ca. You'll see the green bar right across the top of the website. From entering the workforce, I mean, for a lot of young people, little things are going to make a huge difference. It could be warm socks or a bus pass or a phone charger. I mean, the things that we take for granted. For just $100, you can stuff a full stocking, or you can go one off. I mean, a donation of $10 would go a long way for a young person that could really use that encouragement. You can stuff those stockings today at ucan.ca. Damn you, Johnny Infamous. Now all I can think about is sweats.
Sweatsuits. Like actual suits.
I know what you're saying.
You consider.
I know what you're saying.
I get it, Johnny.
I get it, John. I get it. Like a Santa suit. I have a uniform for the holidays that I will be putting on, and I will not be taking it off for about 10 days.
I love it. Everyone has that. It gets the you get all the rum and eggnog all over it.
Oh,
You get the stains from the gravy. Oh, yeah. And you know what? You're like, I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
I'm watching the Grinch again.
I'm going to watch the animated Grinch, and then I'm going to watch the live action Grinch, and then I'm going to watch the original Grinch.
Yeah, and that's great. But, for me, it's the older stuff. And maybe I don't want to paint myself into a corner and reveal my age. But for me, it's like I go back to, I kind of watch them in order. Well, except for Peanuts. I feel like Peanuts, Charlie Brown. You watch that late on Christmas Eve.
Oh, yeah.
It just puts you in this mood. Sometimes you cry. Let's be emotional. But right before, kids are going to bed, like around 8:30, 9 o'clock, you put that on. It calms the room. But I always go back to I don't know if anyone watches it. The Garfield Christmas special is incredible when he has the chair that gives him any present he wants, and then they, for you, probably nostalgia for you, they go out to the farm and Garfield gets close with the grandmother.
Uh-huh.
So I go through all the old stuff. I like to watch A Christmas Carol. I like, I'm not religious, but I'll turn on midnight mass if I'm still up on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and that kind of.
You really do?
Yeah, I don't know. When I was younger, I'm not going to say I wasn't into Christmas. Kids love Christmas for different reasons, but for me, I wasn't into the whole just there's a calming effect about the holidays, no matter if you're celebrating Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or it's just
Festivus.
Or just capping off the year, like friends and family just get together. And I kind of avoided that as a kid. You're a young punk rock kid. I don't want the family stuff. I just want the presents on Christmas morning. But now it's. I don't know. It calms my anxiety. All the stuff that happens around the holidays, and it really is
it's like when Macaulay
goodwill
Culkin,
towards men, all that crap.
when Kevin McAllister goes to church on Christmas
100%.
Eve, right before the 2 burglars come to the house, right?
But all that stuff,
he needed the reset.
All that stuff you kind of swath off as a kid. It really is calming, and now I dive right into it. And it doesn't mean I believe all of it or that I'm it's
okay if
the
you do.
ideology side of it. I like that feeling of my anxiety going down. We've been playing Christmas music
We have been.
all
It's been
month
very
here,
relaxing.
what I
All right,
mean?
that's enough talking about Christmas. Now let's get to World War III.
No.
Let's get to the United States going to war with Venezuela.
Do you want to hit AB wins and then come back and chat?
Well,
or
no,
what do
I
you
want
to
to get to the live chat
Okay.
here, and then we'll get to Alberta Wins because I kind of almost want to end on that because it's like
It is pretty beautiful.
it's so amazing.
Great panel today. I thought
They're good, right?
Almost everything they said, I was like, yes.
I get that there's some people in our live chat are going to. I want to say one thing too, a personal thing to Meta Modern in just a second. But I see Meta Modern in the chat today, and I really appreciate that. But I think there's a lot of people in the chat that are saying like, where's this perspective on this panel, or where's that perspective on this panel? Like, honestly, guys, if I had my wish, although from a hosting perspective, it would be a nightmare.
We would
30
have like people.
30 people on every single panel, and then it could be like, well, what do you think? And here, but I will just say, with the Eye on Alberta Business and our partnership with the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, I think that they brought 4 really sharp people to the table today, and I thought they were great insights. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree with it, and for
not at
sure.
all.
Like Denis took the comment. I mean, Kyle's comment on Alberta being better off separating. It really lit a fire under people. Denis said the separatists can take what Alberta came with, and the treaties can have their land back. And I'm not sure how that negotiation would work for the separatists. But I thought Michaela, and I appreciate that she was the first one to jump in and take that from Kyle, because Michaela comes, she said, southern part of the province.
Mm-hmm.
I loved how she described, and she's so proud to be from there, and she should be proud to be from there. Yeah. It's a beautiful part of the province. I've got wonderful friends in the Brooks area. Mm-hmm. Shout out Newell Lake. But she said, they tend to be particularly ungovernable, and
Sure.
she spoke to the fact that it would be hugely detrimental, and I appreciated that perspective. RS followed up on that boring competence that Michaela called for. I think we could all use a little bit more boring government, couldn't we? But RS says boring competence does not exist because modern politics is all about clicks and rage farming, which leads to monetization. Which it's almost hard to disagree with, isn't it? RS goes on to say blaming Ottawa is as old as Alberta itself. The Social Credit Party was famous for rants against Eastern bankers, and that's why ATB was created. Man, I got down a rabbit hole yesterday on the history of Alberta as a banking center. Mm-hmm. Alberta has a like ATB and Canadian Western Bank and General Bank and like all these banks. Fascinating stuff. General Bank is particularly interesting, sort of almost private banking for Alberta's wealthiest and most formidable or most influential business class. All of this part of rumblings to bring a new bank to Alberta. There's a new bank. It's a global bank that's going to have hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars for nations that are making big defense investments. And for Canada, this is obviously a very relevant story with the NATO commitment. Nathan touched on that today and how Canada needs to get that spending up, and Carney's budgeted for it, and it's a big step for a number of different reasons. Number one, just what it does to the budget. Number two, how integral it is to Canada-U.S. relations, what that even means right now. But also number three, the importance of NATO. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, and again, some of you will think that this sounds conspiratorial. This sounds tinfoil hat kind of esque. I would beg to differ. What the United States, there was a really great comment here in the chat. I apologize, I don't remember who said it, but someone basically said, the President of the United States is identifying what he wants, and he's going to go take it, and Canada better pay attention. And I thought that was one of the best comments we've had in like 6 months in our live chat, because that's absolutely true. And the person that I was able to connect with yesterday, who's one of the smartest people I know, I don't think he really wants his name on the record, but he said to me that he thinks, and this guy's track record, by the way, like there's a reason why I sit with this guy and just listen. He's bang on a lot of things. He says he thinks the Canada-U.S. relationship in 6 months will be unrecognizable. And a big part of that, this is not suggesting that American fighter planes are going to be bombing the Alberta legislature or anything crazy like that. But
not the Sky Palace.
But luckily, the Sky Palace is a few hundred meters away, so it'll escape, which is why they probably should have included a bunker. But I shouldn't be joking about that kind of stuff. But there's different types of warfare. There's different types of exerting influence. That can be economic. That can be trade in many different ways. It's not necessarily going to war from a military standpoint, but I do think that Canada's participation in and investment in NATO is more important now than ever. Let me know what you think. To talk at RyanJesperson.com. Goramut says data centers are not good for us. We don't have the power, and they will use our water. Says this is madness. I've got time for that debate. I do think that the future of data centers and AI, I think that the future of AI in Alberta is already here. And I think that Alberta, in particular, has established itself as not just the AI center of Canada, but one of the global AI centers of excellence. Shout out to Amy, AMII, and everybody else there.
You can't stop AI. There's a lot of pushback on a lot of things in Alberta, and the panel was great today. But one thing I did notice, Miss Frey said this as well as Nathan, we need to stop bringing people to Alberta. Well, you can't. I was like, what are you going to do? Shut the borders? You can't stop people. We already put out the call. People know Alberta's great. There's mountains, an hour outside of both of the urban places. Costs are low compared to the rest of the country. And I just feel like, and I don't want to, I'm not bitching about shows we've done, because we did 4 shows on infill, and everyone I talk to is complaining about construction.
Yeah.
But how did New York State and City is a case study for Alberta right now, because how did they succeed with population growth? They did 3 things really well. I think they built relentlessly, they governed regionally, and they invested in ahead of demand. And we're not doing that. We need to build density. We need to build faster. We need to build ahead of demand. And this whole thing, I keep hearing we need to stop people coming to Alberta. You can't do that. And for me, and maybe it's just me, but I love diversity. I love density. And I think Alberta we should just go. We should just be building relentlessly. I also don't know about that.
Yeah, but to do that, you need to incentivize it. You need to make sure it's done right. Because building crazy
that just slows everything down.
Well,
man.
yeah, man. But if you do it wrong, and then you've blown up neighborhoods, and you've if you do it wrong, you have bad actors in there. There needs to be stringent rules around who's receiving things like government funds, which developers are getting permits. There's a lot of bad actors.
What I hear
out there.
is that's going to slow everything down, and what I hear is costs exploding for everyone, including people who don't want infill next to themselves or whatever, right? But New York also built the subways before there was all this demand for, you know what I mean? They built everything.
If you build it, they will come.
And in the years or decades when they stopped doing what they did all along, which was building relentlessly, and same thing happened. Cost exploded, right?
Yeah.
And so I just think it'd be better for everyone if we stop pushing. Just stop pushing and start pulling.
Super Chat Ken says Danielle Smith has the oil and gas donor devil on one shoulder and the Take Back Alberta MAGA separatists on her other shoulder. Says Ken. Ken says, and she's a separatist. So who's going to win that battle? I'm not convinced that Danielle Smith is a separatist. I mean, she, on December 9th, recently sat in this very chair here in our studio in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, and absolutely said that she is not. We asked her point blank, and I know you're going to say, Ryan, is this the first time a politician has lied to you? But I'm just saying, she's got a lot at stake right now, and this is, in my opinion, a massive problem for her. I'm not going to call it an inconvenience. I think it's a massive problem. The separation uprising here, we have good word from a reputable source that internal polling from the UCP shows that they've got a narrow lead, a margin, a single-digit margin, but a lead nonetheless on Naheed Nenshi's UCP. But that does not include Alberta Separatists or the Alberta Republican Party, as they're calling it, or what have you. So this is a fine line. The last provincial election, Johnny will remember, was the closest in Alberta history. And so this is something that could blow up in Premier's face. And she's going to have to, it is a delicate and dangerous dance. We talked briefly with Supriya right after our 5th anniversary party, where we brought sponsors and political players and things like that into this room, and it's almost like we experienced this too. It's when you bring a bunch of people from a bunch of different perspectives into the same room, sometimes you're like, oh gosh, what's going to happen if these two people connect, or what's going to happen if these two people talk to each other? And that almost seems like when you're talking about a big tent political party, if you are serving different masters, so to speak, or if you've got like people with significant heft and influence and all of them expect to see their perspectives or their priorities represented and legislated upon, it's a really it's an untenable position long term. Like, I think that's one of the most obvious things we can say. So, Ken, I'll take your point. I'm not convinced that Danielle Smith personally is a separatist. I do know that people close to her are separatists. That's a fact. And she is in a tough spot. Meta Modern in the chat says it was pretty short-sighted on the Alberta Calling campaign to do that entire campaign, but then do nothing to prepare for all the people that would come. And that's an insightful comment. Meta Modern, I also wanted to say, you touched a nerve yesterday in our chat. I blew off a little steam. I saw your super chat contribution at the very end, right as the show was signing off. And I just wanted to say on a personal level, I appreciate you being here. So thanks for that. Johnny was my psychiatrist as I talked that one out after the show went off the air yesterday. So that was a good one. We got a ton of comments here on what all of you think Alberta needs to do moving into 2026 when it comes to that relationship with BC, when it comes to the relationship with Ottawa, when it comes to attracting capital, when it comes to growing these cities. Really interesting takes from Nathan as well on the role that the cities are going to play moving forward. I had no idea. I mean, it's obvious when it comes to property taxes and who collects the lion's share of income taxes and the like. But to hear that it's just 8% of total taxes collected are the municipalities, but you look at the load on those municipalities, obviously different levels of government kick in on things like major infrastructure repairs. Calgary knows all about that with that huge water main debacle last summer. You remember that. We can talk about mass transit, those sorts of things. But the municipalities are the ones left holding the bag, in particular when it comes to costs like around policing and the like. So that's a conversation to continue, and I thought that was a great point there from Nathan. Shout out to Explorer Hollis, who just lets us know that they're listening to the show from the skid steer today. That's awesome. Maybe streaming on the Mixler live streaming audio app, or maybe even watching it on YouTube. Who knows? We appreciate everybody that joins us on 7 different social media platforms. You know, that's where you can find Real Talk, and you can always, of course, leave a comment. If you are catching us live in our live chat here, it's hosted on YouTube, but you can leave your comments on any of the platforms, and it, what do you call it? No, it's not correlates. What's the word I'm looking for? Not coagulates, correlates. It's collected here together anyway in our live chat powered by Park Power. All right, let's get to this story. This is every Thursday, courtesy of our friends at Play Alberta. We present a story where Alberta is winning. Sometimes it's on the national stage, sometimes it's on the international stage, sometimes it's just right here at home. And that's the case in this week's edition. This was submitted by a few of you. One of you saw it on cable sports, one of you saw it on TikTok, one of you saw it on Instagram, and of course you forced our hand in the best way. We knew that this had to be it. This is a development. This played out. A young athlete, a high school athlete at Jasper Place High School in Edmonton by the name of Jordan Hunter went absolutely viral after the grade 12 student made a trick dunk off the ceiling of the Jasper Place High School gym. I'm going to do my best to describe this for those of you that are listening on the podcast, but Johnny, let's roll the video. This is absolutely nuts. Look at this. He throws it up, he hits the rafters, bounces back off another rafter, bounces off the floor onto the backboard, and then he dunks it home. This is nuts. Don't worry, we're going to show it to you again. I've already watched this like 10 times, and it blows my mind every single time I see it. Just wait till you hear about Jordan Hunter's family history. Here it is again. So he throws it. You got to hit the absolute perfect spot. Rafter to floor to backboard, up and home. I've never seen anything like this, but it has happened at Jasper Place High School before. And you know who did it before? It was his dad. Yeah, Jordan Hunter says, my dad used to do that same off-the-roof dunk. He was my coach on the junior team 2 years ago, and after practices, he showed me how to do it. He says my dad still got it. He's still got the throw. I don't know if his dad's still throwing down. But Jordan figured that after his dad demoed it for him that he could probably go do the dunk, and that's exactly what he did. And people literally around the world are talking about this incredible display. It's going to look even better in slow-mo. Look at this. Up rafter to floor to backboard. And it should be mentioned that he's doing this in front of like what looks to me to be 1,500 or 2,000 people, which has got to be absolutely insane. So a shout out to Jordan Hunter. I also have it on good rumor that Edmonton basketball royalty Jordan Baker has also completed this dunk. Now, I've not verified that, but either way, this is rarefied air. So a huge shout out in this edition of Alberta Wins to Jordan Hunter at Jasper Place High School. This is truly an Alberta win, with millions of views and basketball fans from around the world celebrating this incredible accomplishment. Alberta Wins is presented Thursdays on Real Talk by our friends at Play Alberta. You can check them out online at playalberta.ca. You know, with casino winners every hour, millions of dollars paid out and revenue that stays in the province, there's never been a better time to sign up at playalberta.ca or by way of the Play Alberta app. And right now, Real Talkers can score a $50 casino bonus when they make a minimum $50 deposit with the code Ryan50. That's Ryan50 for a $50 casino bonus. You must be 18 or over to play. And if you do gamble, please use your game sense. We also want to, of course, invite you to submit your Alberta Wins anytime to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Shout out to Meta Modern and shout out to Matthew YEG and others. Look, what's this? Meta Modern kicking in twice on our super chat today. Gosh, do we ever appreciate that? Let me read these messages here. Let me catch up and scroll. The live chat's been humming today. Matthew Yeg says, Johnny, if you want goosebumps, check out, is it Sainsbury's 2014 Christmas ad. Maybe we can check this out. Sainsbury Christmas ad. Says, I watch it every year and it still tugs at the heartstrings. Metamodern says, look at this. Says, I don't mean to stir the pot. I would say again. But can we put Mariah Carey Christmas in the same pack as Brenda Lee, Bing Crosby, etc.? Says, I've played it every year for the last 31 years. What is your all-time classic Chris, do you have like a go-to all-time classic Christmas album?
Album?
Yeah.
Nah.
No song?
Come on. We're living in the digital age now.
Okay,
we don't pick
fair.
up albums anymore. But like, I do like the
A lot
classics.
of people bring out vinyl
at
Christmas.
I go back to the Ronettes, Sleigh Ride. Like, all my favorites are like were made probably before I was born. Like, one of my favorite, and everything correlates around the holidays. Like my connection to one of my probably my all-time favorite is All Alone on Christmas by Darlene Love, because it's like sad, happy at the same time, but it also was like the song that was playing from Home Alone 2 when Kevin is going over the bridge into Manhattan, and it's like a drone shot. I guess it wasn't drones back then, though, guys. It was probably like an actual helicopter. This was like, late 90s or whatever. But that shot and that song playing is like ingrained in my adolescent mind. So that's like my favorite Christmas song. But yeah, all the old ones. And then, of course, I like some of the newer pop stuff as well. But yeah, if I had to pick up an album, it would probably be from like 1960 or something.
Huh. Yeah, I like that. I was listening to the John Legend Christmas album yesterday, which is good. I've tracked down the Sainsbury 2014 Christmas ad. It was released in 2014, but it's shot as though it's Christmas Eve 1914. In other words, World War I. And I have this crazy idea that maybe we should play it on the show right now, even though it's an ad. I wonder if we can invoice Sainsbury for this. No, but in all seriousness, it's like 3.5 minutes. I will just say this. Why don't we leave this with Real Talkers, and you can check this out. Johnny, if you show my screen, here it is. Christmas Eve 1941. Sainsbury's is a British supermarket chain, grocery store. And you know what? As a shout out to our friends at Friesen Brothers, we will not run ads for competing grocery stores, though they're in different jurisdictions. But I can already tell that I love this ad. And so Matthew YEG, your suggestion, I'm going to watch this after the show and encourage others to do so. A 3-minute, 40-second ad as a shout out to those who served their country bravely, not just in World War I through the Christmas season. It's always crazy when you hear about people like laying down their arms and the things that would happen or through the holiday season at war. Obviously, human nature, war is humanity in most circumstances at our absolute worst, isn't it? And but you see people in many circumstances at their best. It kind of brings it back to the thought that we were sharing just a couple of shows ago, that Christmas is difficult for many people. Perhaps someone in your life is deployed overseas right now. Perhaps you just lost someone. A friend of mine just lost a family member. We're thinking of Gord this week. It's going to be a difficult Christmas for him. Christmas is difficult for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And amidst that, of course, oftentimes it shapes our perspective in ways that are truly the most important. This is really a captivating ad. We're watching it as we speak. Matthew YEG, thanks for sharing that. We sure appreciate it. Real Talkers, wanted to let you know what's coming up over our next couple of episodes. I'll say the next 3. Before we wrap, we're also going to do, today was Alberta business, Alberta politics, taking a look at the specific angles of what, what's going to shape the landscape into 2026. In our next episode, he's one of the best friends of this show. He's one of our all-time favorite guests, and he was with us on a recurring basis until the former Prime Minister tapped him on the shoulder to serve in the Red Chamber. Senator Charles Adler, a Lifetime Achievement Award winner, legendary talk show host, is going to join us in the next episode of the show. That's going to be Friday, the 19th of December. We also have a special wrap on that show on the 22nd. That's going to be the Monday as we wrap today's show. Just letting you know, Supriya Dwivedi will be back. Plus, we have a special cameo, and I guarantee you it's going to be an exclusive. Nobody else is talking to this guy before Christmas Eve. I absolutely and boldly guarantee that. Don't miss that show on the 22nd. And then for our YouTube channel subscribers and for our Patreon supporters, check your messages this weekend for details on the 23rd show of VIP Edition.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lauren Sterlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.